Hello, everyone. I'm Rev Karla, and welcome to Spirituality Matters, a podcast that focuses on the intersection of spirituality and humanity. So let's settle in and find that sacred space between here, where I am, and there, where you are. And let us be reminded that the holy transcends our physical bodies, and our time together is just as sacred and meaningful as if we were sitting beside one another. Okay, let's get started. This is the podcast where we answer some of my followers' questions. So as they say in the social media land, let's get into it. We have some good questions today. So we're going to start with this one. How is it that the one lady rewriting Nico's song is appropriation? People rewrite songs all the time, and she never claimed it was originally hers. I completely disagree with what she said about Nico, but don't understand how it's appropriation. Do you follow Elena Sabatini? I don't. She rewrites hymns from a deconstructed viewpoint. Okay, yep, I think I know who that is. And is that also wrong? Or all the other people that have rewritten songs to be Christian? I don't understand why this time it would be appropriation. Thank you for your amazing videos. And if you don't want or have time to respond to this, I understand. I have time. I made time. Let's start with Elena. I actually have seen some of her videos. I think I actually duetted one of her songs. A lot of the hymns that she has done are considered, what do they call, like in the public realm? Like they're not copyright because they're so old, even though I do believe she did one on Hillsong. And that was part of her deconstructing experience. You have a good point. The problem with Nico's song now. So if you don't know who Nico is, and some of you are like, wait a minute, back up. What are we talking about here? We just assume that you're jumping right into TikTok and you know everything that's happening here. I have a video where I shared about a woman who created new lyrics around a Nico, I-N-I-K-O, song. And there are several. If you just go to TikTok and you type in Nico Rose Worship, you're going to find it. You're going to find out what this is all about. So W Rose Worship took Nico's song, which is a lovely song. It's also incredibly spiritual, rewrote the lyrics, and then is pushing that out there to the masses. And it got a lot of pushback, and she just keeps doubling down. Many people are calling this appropriation, and that is coming from the place that Nico is Black. So whether you like it or not, there will often be a different way to view things through that lens, because for many years, Black people not only had their culture suffocated, on the other side of that, they had it appropriated. Their language suffocated, appropriated. Their dress suffocated, appropriated, depending on how those in power wanted to use the gifts and the talents and the wisdom of Black people. So W. Rose did a couple of things that were problematic. First of all, and you would acknowledge that she said you don't agree with what she said about Nico. She called her a demon. She called her a demon. The other thing she did was say that God told her to rewrite the lyrics, when Nico's song is spiritual. So there's a judgment placed over the music of Nico, which if you listen to the music, it's incredibly powerful. So there were several places where W. Rose Worship had violated and disrespected a Black woman's culture, spirituality, and humanness, and then continued to double down and be glorified for it, if you will. She's been put on stages at church, patted on the back for what she did. A typical white Christian woman's response to something like that. So that has been incredibly problematic. Now, again, back to Elena, a white woman who's making these songs. never once have I heard her say that a song from Hillsong is demonic. Never once have I heard her say, well, God told me to rewrite these lyrics. Never once have I heard any of that. Could a Christian be offended by what she's doing? Probably. I don't care. Christians have been at the forefront of appropriating this kind of behavior as W. Rose worship, leading this type of behavior as W. Rose worship has to Aniko. So in some ways, this is what payback looks like. I know this may sound a little callous and a little flippant, and I'm not trying to be that way, but there is an edge to what you wrote here that sounds more defensive than actually asking questions. And even though you say you like my videos, I really think that you might want to think about what part of you is perhaps gatekeeping a little bit of what's happening. Because if I go out and I search for that right now, if I go out and I search for that video right now, I'm going to find 10 videos by Black people very passionately explaining to W. Rose Worship what she did to a Black woman and why it was so painful to their heritage and to the work that Aniko does. So I would encourage you to make sure that it's not just the white perspective, that you're filtering this through your white experience, but you're seeing it through the eyes and the ears and the experience of Black people on why this was so problematic and hurtful and troubling, and why people still cannot believe to this day that W. Rose Worship is doubling down. Well, since then, there's been another one just like her who's come out, who's appropriating Japanese culture, Chinese culture, Korean culture, Native American culture, African spiritual culture. She does not care. And she's loving the attention because that kind of Christian, W. Rose Worship, and this person who's doing this, it validates their feelings of being persecuted that nobody understands. And you can tell I'm triggered. This bothers me. So for you, I feel like it is an honest question. I do believe you probably need to go back and do a little deconstructing yourself to see why there is an edge of defensiveness, at least what I'm picking up in some of what you wrote here. Thank you so much for your question. To the next one, could you address how evangelicals and others like them can seemingly be okay with the number of clergy and related church officials involved in the abuse of members of the congregation? I used to be evangelical, but this absolutely mystifies me. So yeah, let's talk about indoctrination. So it sounds like you may have, if this mystifies you, then my guess is that you may not have been in a high control evangelical church as many of us are, where we're taught that our obedience to and our silence are next to godliness. We are taught that it's a religious patriarchal structure, and the men, not only in the family, but in that church structure, are next to God. They are ordained and chosen by God. And even though they may fall short sometimes, God loves and forgives them. And nothing they do on this earthly plane will disconnect that lineage of them, of God touching their lives for them to be the leaders of the church. So instead of holding them accountable, many of these churches and religious institutions build systems around them to protect them from being held accountable. It's the perfect setting for a groomer. It's the perfect setting for a groomer, which is why in the last year, of the people who have been charged or prosecuted of crimes against children, I think there was one trans person, while the hundreds of others are straight, cisgender, heterosexual men, and many of them belong to churches. I can get that data. There's a person on TikTok who collects that data every week. I'll put that in the show notes. Make a note to put that in the show notes, so you can have that information and start following them, because it's fascinating. But it comes down to the indoctrination. I think back last year where there was a video on TikTok of a pastor who got up in front of his church here in Indiana and was admitting to an affair with a woman who would have been who was 15. But he was admitting to an affair with a woman who was 15. She stood up and said, "It was not an affair. You groomed me." And then trigger warning, talking about sexual assault, "You raped me." He then started to try to dance around that and change the language. And then she got up and told some of her story. And at the end, she went off to the corner with several women around comfort her, while the entire swarm of the congregation went up to lay hands on the pastor and pray for him. The visual representation of the victim in the corner with just a few women comforting her while everyone was up front is everything you need to know about this evangelical indoctrination that says we must protect the God ordained no matter what they do. That is, I hope that helps, because it is mystifying. It's disgusting. It's sad. And luckily, more people are calling it out, but still, that's what happened. It would be interesting to go back and see if he's still the head pastor. My guess is he is. My guess is he is. I'd have to go back and see if I can find that video, but I don't have a good follow-up system on those kinds of things. It's just me and my computer, mostly on my phone, so I'm not sure. But thank you so much for that question. Next one, do you have any suggestions on how I can help my 10-year-old son learn that he doesn't have to follow his father's strict Christian beliefs? I am divorced from my son's father, who is a terrible, bigoted narcissist. I'm so worried about religious brainwashing, and I want my son to form his own beliefs. Well, that's very commendable of you. And I know these situations are hard. I've witnessed them and experienced them myself. A 10-year-old is definitely old enough to start thinking about things related to his spirituality and his spiritual well-being. I know you have to be careful about the conversations that you have related to his father's house and how that could possibly compromise your relationship with your son if he feels like he can't trust you with things and somehow that gets back to the father. I would encourage you as much as you can to sit down with him and talk about things about spirituality. What does he believe about God? What does he believe about God? And then turning it back to give him an opportunity to answer those questions. So he might say, for instance, I'm just throwing this out. Well, I don't believe in an angry God. Or my dad tells me God is angry towards me if I don't do what he wants. And asking your son, do you believe in an angry God? Do you believe in an angry God? Do you believe in a loving God? And start to give him questions that he can contemplate, even if he doesn't know the answers, and not pushing him for the answers, but those questions will be there as he's going to bed at night. When he wakes up in the morning, he'll start to think about those things. And another thing you can do is if he offers something about his father's Christian beliefs that say something like, my dad said, another random thing, because a lot of, if it's a rigid Christian dogma, you'll often hear things like someone who's in the media, well, too bad they're going to hell because they weren't saved. And that's a wonder. And if your son repeated that, you saying something like, well, I just believe we came from love, and love is where we return. I don't think we need to worry. I don't think there's anything to be afraid about. And in the calmest voice, where you're not trying to show him that you're trying to convince him like to do his math homework, or that you're trying to correct him in anything, you're just offering your perspective. You're offering what you believe, and that you really believe in this loving God, that that you don't have to give that much structure than that. So if and when it comes up, I just would not make that big of a deal about it. The most important thing that you can give your son is a safe space to come to talk to you about things. And he knows, outside of his physical body or anything about him being harmed, he knows, which of course is reportable. Anything else, he knows that he can safely come to you and talk to you, and it will stay between you two. I think that is the most important thing. And that will not only lead to conversations about spirituality, but about other things in your life. And I think that's meaningful. So I hope that helps. I'm thinking of other things, but I really think that that's enough. I just don't think this needs to be complicated. I love this question. I wasn't even sure. I'm like, I'm not going to put this on here, but no, we're going to do it. Abraham paid respect to Melchizedek. Did I say that right? Melchizedek? Is that right? Yeah, it's Melchizedek. Sorry, it was misspelled in the question. Why did he do that? All right. First of all, I'm not a Bible scholar. So a lot of what I knew about Melchizedek came from my own religious upbringing. And then a little bit of what I learned when I was in college before I went on to seminary. But I did not study enough to even consider myself a biblical scholar in any way, shape, or form. This is one of those questions for one of the scholars on one of the social media who's offered this up all the time. But Melchizedek is a very interesting figure in the Bible. You have this mysterious, enigmatic figure that I have heard people, pastors preach that this is God. That's who this is. But okay, well, he appears in Genesis 14, and he is supposedly the king of ancient Jerusalem. And he's considered the priest of God, of the God Most High. So that is somebody who's very powerful, right? So, but he's described as being very mysterious. The scripture says he had no mother, he had no father, he had no genealogy, and he had no beginning to his life, and he had no end. So in that way, he resembles the Son of God. You can go read Hebrews 7, chapter 3. So he has this interaction with Abraham where Melchizedek meets Abraham after Abraham has a victory over the kings who had captured Lot. Okay, so that is Abraham's nephew. And you hear about Lot a lot in the Bible. So at that point, he encounters Abraham. Abraham has Lot back. He blesses Abraham by saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth." So apparently he's this physical incarnation, if you will, because he has the legitimacy to say that God's going to bless you. Creator of heaven and earth is going to bless you. So in response to that, Abraham gives him a tenth of everything. Now that is considered the establishment of tithing, not only in the priesthood of Judaism, but in the tithing system of Christianity. So he's identified as this priest of God Most High, but God Most High is also a term that's often used for the Most High God. So is Melchizedek actually a priest, or is he actually the supreme God? I don't know. That's debatable. But his priesthood is significant because you're looking at this story happening prior to the Levitical priesthood, which is all laid out in Leviticus. I'm sorry, in Leviticus. So this is all under that was all under the law of Moses, where you now have a priesthood established and with very defined, very rigid structure. But before that, you had this Melchizedek. So you have this priesthood replacing this thought of Melchizedek. But this becomes important because you start to see in the book of Hebrews, like I said, 7:3, where Melchizedek's priesthood is compared to that of Jesus Christ, which Melchizedek didn't have a beginning and an end, had no earthly father. So he's supposed to be seen as this type of Christ, and this emphasizes Christ's priesthood and anchors it to the Levitical priesthood that's also linked back to Melchizedek. So in other words, you have this lineage of them. So see how Jesus is portrayed, and it's part of this priest lineage that legitimizes Jesus in a way. So this respect, going back to the question, this respect that Abraham shows Melchizedek, and then in turn Melchizedek worshiping God, seems to show this is integrated into the Jewish and Christian traditions that show the importance and lineage of priesthood, the importance of divine authority. So whether or not that's what the writer of that it was trying to portray with Melchizedek, there certainly seems to be a spinning by the time you get to the New Testament to anchor some of the New Testament writings and bring them up and legitimize it. What you see often with New Testament is to anchor it into the Old Testament writings so that there's a replacement theology, if you will, which is saying that nothing in the Christian Bible Old Testament, which is the Hebrew Bible, which is still very active, which is why it's called replacement theology. It's this thought that Christians have the right to replace this theology because only the New Testament, the Old Testament is for reference and historical context. The New Testament is the covenant under which we live. So there seems to be like a lineage that we're trying to create here. That was so much more than what you wanted. I hope that was certainly helpful. Any advice on how to be angry at how not? I was going to say, yeah, I can help you be angry. Any advice on how not to be angry at my fundy parents, my fundamentalist parents? I love them, but they have made bad choices. Well, you have a right to your anger. You have a right to it, first of all. Righteous anger is a signal that shows us that something needs light. Something is pointing to us that's broken, that needs to be admitted, that needs to be tended to, that needs some gentle touches. But it sounds like when you ask about how you don't want to be angry, that's also a signal that you're ready to let it go and move through anger. Now, our emotions are our emotions. It's a basket that we carry with us. Oftentimes we're denied those in high control places, especially in our indoctrinated beliefs inside religion. But we carry them with us. So anger might come up in different times. As you saw me get a little heated when I was answering the question about Aniko, there's different places depending on where we are on our journey and what's happening in our lives. So, but anger was oftentimes denied us because it was pointing too close to our truth. So many of us would be gaslit if we showed up in a place of anger and made it turn around like, oh, we're out of control. I don't know if you saw the series of videos I did a couple of weeks ago when a evangelical Christian came in to talk to me about Andy Stanley. And if you don't know how I feel about Andy Stanley, go do a deep dive in my videos. I'm not going to go there, not going to get heated on that one. But I explained, I said, I explained why, when this person pushed back, I explained my position, and this person came back and said, well, I'm not going to talk to you because you're highly emotional and bitter and angry, and just added all these things that were very sexist that you would not say towards a man. But because I created the offense, I committed the offense of pushing back, of holding this person accountable, which was a white Christian male. So his first response was to try to bring me under control by judging my behavior, by expecting me to submit to that. But that's not what happened at all. I pushed back. And even if I had come at him with all full force of anger, even to the point where I was throwing F-bombs at him, I have the right to do that. Anger that's used in a way that helps us hold our boundaries and communicate our position is not a mistake. It's part of who we are. It's part of our range of emotion. Now, anger used when it's out of control and it becomes insulting and degrading, and it becomes almost like a gaslighting because you're not staying on point, then that's a different conversation. But this type of anger, and what I'm hearing from you, is that it's productive for us until it isn't. And so you're asking, and I'm excited for you, is what do you need to do to move on beyond the anger? Because you might find that you need it again. So you're going to, it stays with us. It's going to stay there in some form. We don't ever have to get rid of it. It's part of who we are. So I'm going to give you that gift right now. But for you to move on means that you now are ready to learn coping skills and have conversations that allow you to build a bridge higher over the troubled waters. Obviously, you still love your parents. Obviously, you want to have a relationship with them, but you want to take it off of the context of your past and a place where they cannot use their fundamentalist beliefs for you. So that's going to require some conversations around boundaries. And oftentimes that anger comes from a place when we're not protecting our boundaries, right? So people get in there and we let them, and then we feel we are devalued and sometimes dehumanized, and we don't feel good after those. So we go back to anger, because anger is the only thing that helps us feel like we're in control of the situation. So my guess is that there are some things that you need to work on that will help you find the boundaries that you need, the words that you need, because it really is practicing them, like who you're going to be and how this relationship is going to move forward. So this might be the start of that. I would encourage you, it sounds like you might be following me on social media. That would be great, because I do talk about boundaries a lot. If you are not a part of my Rev Karla's Inner Circle, we're going to do a lot of that. And I also did a Sacred Conversations with Rev Karla that's recorded, that you could go purchase and download, where we talk about sacred boundaries. The Facebook is free, and the Sacred Conversations is something that you can pay for if that feels like something that you want to do. The point is that there's some free resources. There's some out there that can help you, but I would start with the very basic. What boundaries do you need to put in place? What boundaries do you need to put in place? Even just making that action to start writing those things down, you're going to start seeing progress. Sorry. Lots of talking today, so I need to keep more water in me. Okay, I think we have run out of time with a couple of questions, so I'll park these for next month. But thank you so much for listening, beloved. You can watch the uncut version of today's episode on my YouTube channel, Spirituality Matters with Rev Karla, and you can find me on all of the social media platforms. And don't forget my Rev Karla's Inner Circle Facebook group. It's free. It's a safe and sacred community where I come in and I answer your questions several times a week, and we have a lot of fun in there. Don't forget to look at revkarla.com for my upcoming courses and live teachings. I'm so honored to be in this space with you. Go in peace and be at peace. Go in love and may you be loved. Go and know that others are on this journey with you and you are not alone. You are seen and deeply and unconditionally loved just the way you are. Blessings on your week. I'll see you soon.